So just growing up, like, what was your initial childhood dreams of, I want to be when I grow up?
That was probably the hardest thing at first to really understand is like,
Yeah.
you have to find common ground with people. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to relate. It's interesting, but the one thing I would say at this point in time, it's time. Like, I think about time now as like a huge goal of being able to do the things, in a balanced way.
So if you could go back and talk to your 18-year-old, 17, 18-year-old self right out of high school, what would you tell yourself about where you are and what's going to happen? Well, welcome back to Human Expeditions. We're on the road now, so we're starting to bounce around a little bit, and we're sitting at Core Vantage with Mr. Charles Ernst. So thanks for letting us use your little abode here. It's a pretty nice place you got.
Hey, thanks, Tim. I mean, I got to give all the credit to my wife. She guess what? Looked it up on YouTube and then put this thing together.
Well, either
So it's
way,
good.
you're a smart man for doing that.
You know what?
You handled that well, so good job.
Well, I've been coached up a little bit.
So, real quick, just a little tidbit about what do you guys do here, and what makes it different?
So we're an insurance agency. We specialize in employee benefits, workman's comp, anything that really has to do with companies offering benefits to their employees. And it's been quite the journey with some of the regulations and everybody's freaking out about
In California?
how expensive it is. Yeah, in California, but we really like to work with employers, and the idea is it's very high touch, high tech, and we look at not only the companies as our customers, but the end users, the employees as our customers as well. We want them to have a great experience.
Yeah, that's awesome because I know in talking to a lot of business owners and just personal experience, I don't know when it happened, but it seems like people feel invisible these days, right? Like you go into some place or somebody, you sign up for a service and then you don't hear from the insurance guy again until the next year where it's renewal. Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, buddy. It's like,
Yeah,
buddy.
And it's like you're getting into that mindset of like where I think it is getting a lot more like that, because I feel like I don't know, Tim. I think over time the relational aspect, I don't know if people have just forgotten how important that is, to be relational and know that this is an ongoing thing, where it's not just a once a year. Hey, here's your renewal. What do you think?
No, I think that's exactly what happens. And so, as I kind of prefaced that, the whole idea of Human Expeditions is to go through people's unique stories. Because as I've met a variety of business owners, there's a misconception out there about being in business.
Right.
And, you must have been born with a silver spoon or you had a leg up. And when you dig into people's stories, you find out that that's not the case, right? It's the ebbs and flows of life. So with that, I like to go back and start with your childhood. So just growing up, like, what was your initial childhood dreams of, I want to be when I grow up?
It's interesting you say that, because I think for the longest time, you always go through those methodologies of, hey, I want to be a fireman, policeman, astronaut, right? I mean, I think those are kind of the normal three that young people, maybe a superhero, and some aspect of it.
Take a cape, jump off something.
Yeah, exactly.
Break something.
But as time went on, I think really in high school, growing up, I grew up overseas. My dad had met my mom in Korea.
Okay.
So they were married. I was born there. We moved to the States for a couple of years.
But bounced around there? Or?
Well, for just the initial part. And then we went back to the States, and, she got her citizenship. And then we went to Saudi Arabia. And my dad worked for the government. He worked for
dry
the
heat.
Yeah, a little bit of dry heat. It was quite the experience, right? Because you went over there and then you were put up in a compound. You get a car at the motor pool. It was different. We stayed there for about 4 years, and I went to an international school, so it gave me a lot of exposure to different cultures, different people. Because the Saudis would bring in people from all sorts of countries, to kind of help with the engineering. We met this family from Northern Ireland that owned a dairy, and their job was to create a functioning dairy in 10 years.
Really?
So it's like, it was great. And Dad was really good about not necessarily taking the trip back home to the States and just going to different countries. So I mean, there was a time where I saw more countries than I did states, and that was a blessing because it gave me an understanding of that there's just different cultures and different ways that people do things, and it's really interesting to see what we have here versus what other countries have.
So you've actually seen it, and how old were you when this was happening?
So this was from age, I'd say like 2.5, 3, all the way up to I think 11, and we
Okay.
did leave Saudi, and we were there for 4 years, and then moved back to Korea, for a number of years as well, and then didn't actually move to the States until I was 11 years old, which was 6th grade. So I had all this exposure of just different culture. So it was a little bit of a shock to kind of move back in.
So then when you came back here, where did you live at?
We lived in Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah. So my dad continued his career, and there was a military base there. And
So a little bit. That's almost a reverse culture shock, though, right?
oh, it was, man.
Because all these kids are like, "What? You're
Yes.
Korea and places that I've maybe even never heard of."
Right. Right. And when I moved to California after high school to start a job, actually start in the ag industry, there was people that are like the farthest they made it was like we were in Porterville, and they're like, yeah, maybe Visalia, maybe whatever. It wasn't really like a big thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're from where? Or like, where you been?
I saw that on a map one time. Like, no, it's weird because I like to think about people talk about their box they live in, right? Like, and I go back to when the days of the flat Earth theory, and there's
Oh.
still some people emoting that. But it's weird to me that if you never leave 50 miles of your home, what do you care if the world's round? What do you care if, like, it might as well be flat if you're never going to go anywhere. So what's it matter, right?
It's true. You are basically what your environment is, right? So if you don't see the value in going out there and being further along, you're not gonna. I think people don't. That's why they don't leave, and that's why they just stay in the same
It's
spot.
comfort zone, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
So what, from when you were a kid, what core values did you learn then that you still carry with you?
one of the things that was interesting that I learned from my dad, and I talked about this right around Father's Day. I was thinking about how he was just always so disciplined and diligent about certain things. It was like church every Sunday. It was like we have to make sure that if our family needs us, we got to be there. And it was really kind of this ingrained issue like that, this is important. And if it's important, you need to do it.
Right.
And I never really knew how that would correlate in the future, but it really does. I mean, because it really gives you a core value of understanding that, hey, if people need you or you need to be dependable, you can
So
do
that's
that.
the military kind of discipline, stay
Yes.
structured, stay awesome.
Yes.
So then, all right, so through all of that, and especially moving here, I think that one thing that we all share as entrepreneurs is overcoming obstacles, right?
Mhm.
So were there ever times, especially when you came here with your experience, of feeling stuck?
Oh, absolutely. There was many a times. I think in my career, I started. I mentioned I went to work for family.
Mhm.
I think my dad's sister married into a citrus family, and I worked, and
Right.
that was another good work lesson because I had to work 14-hour days, and when you're packing fruit, I mean it's not the easiest work, right? So
you
you
had
got to
that
get
air
through it.
conditioning, and you had
Yeah.
clean air.
Yeah, get here at 6. Everybody else gets here at 7, and then you go home an hour later, and you got to just sit in this machine all day long and put glue and make sure that it works and doesn't get. And I did that, and then in the summertime it was kind of weird because they had to find stuff for you to do because it's out of the season.
Oh yeah.
And but here's the reality check in feeling stuck is that was when I had my first child, and I got laid off because there was a freeze. And I was family, but I was distant family.
Yeah.
And there was other priorities, so I went to
Right.
school.
So welcome to adulting.
Welcome to adulting. So I'm sitting here and I'm going, man, this is crazy. So I said, okay, well, what I'm going to do? So I went to school and did some different things. But that was the first real time where I was like, man, I don't have. I mean, the element of control, but like when you're young like that and you're thinking, okay, everything is in order and it's supposed to be happening this way.
Till it's not.
Till it's not. And it's like, man, and I'm even family, and I'm getting the boot, right? Because
not close enough family. You're one removed.
So that was a pretty big lesson, being married and at that young age, at 23.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, how about so in high school? So you come at 11, and
Yes.
you hit the high school years. What about like setbacks and adversity through those years? Like,
Well, it's kind of let's go back to culture shock, because I think you kind of brought it. It's like a reverse culture shock. I think if we go back to those times, it was really, really difficult for me to kind of like, I mean, I don't want to say like fit in, but I kind of felt different, right? Because like my knowledge base and view of the world, just seeing so much more, was not necessarily everyone else's, right? So they were seeing things in this, and I was seeing things like that, and not one better, one worse. It was just we just saw things differently.
yeah, the different perspectives of the world, right?
Yeah.
So in high school and through that, like, well, from 11 when you came, what strategies did you come up with for dealing with that? How did you overcome adversity, setbacks, failures in those junior high school years? Like,
Well, I'll just be honest. I wasn't perfect at it, right?
well, there goes my illusion of you. Jinx.
Yeah, I wasn't perfect at it, but I think one of the things that I really learned was that I did have to find common ground. So if somebody didn't say, because that was probably the hardest thing at first to really understand, is like, you have to find common ground with people, otherwise you're not going to be able to relate, and you're not going to have any friends,
Right.
because unless somebody has the exact same upbringing as you,
Right.
they're not even going to understand.
So find those commonalities with people not.
Right, and be willing to move. So like, if you understand that, I understand very quickly that, if I had all these things, maybe it was better for me to, yes, share those things, but limited, but maybe take more time to listen and try to understand their culture, right, and what they grew up with, and become more adaptable to that. And when I found to do that, things went a lot smoother for me.
Yeah, I think to this day, I think the one thing in business and just in life is curiosity, right?
Yes.
You could have gone in and said, "You guys are stupid." Like,
Yeah.
I've been around the world. I've seen all these things. You guys are a bunch of, hicks, and we like to categorize people, right? But instead, be like, "All right, I'm curious," which is what I heard you say. Like, tell me about like how you grew up, and let me understand a different perspective of the world.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, I still carry that with me. Like, I think that's the missing pieces. Like, there's the fixed versus growth mindset. I'm more interested in how curious people are.
Yes.
Are they curious people that want to know, or are they the know-it-all that already has the answers? And
Right.
because I think those people are harder to talk to then.
Oh, I would fully agree. And I think to your point, it gets to that moment where, are you really going to find some common ground, or is some, and people get turned off, right? I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot of studies that people just shut down. If somebody comes in like that and just wants to dominate, their point of view.
Yeah, I still do that with people, even highly if they start going down a pathway and it's like, oh, okay, you're just locked in on this. There's no reason to have a conversation, right, about that topic, because you already know it. So why talk about it?
Absolutely.
So then, all right, so fast forward, get out of college, 23, have a kid, start adulting, and probably still to today, but I think all of us, I know all people, and especially entrepreneurs, there's that struggle within, right? There's that, whether it's like in internal battles, right?
Right.
The voices that,
right,
because we have our subconscious talking to us. There's our illusion of what life was going to be like, but it's not. So with those inner struggle, what were yours at that time? Like those internal battles you were having? Like,
well, I mean, I think a lot of it was just trying to figure out, how to be a responsible human being. Now I'm married. I have this kid, and I'm straight up tell. The day that he was born, I went home and I cried. I cried, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am responsible for this, life, and this is my son, and I have responsibilities now, and I got to quit, fooling around, and I think, getting laid off during that time was kind of a harsh reality. And then going in, so went and found another job, got in technology and so on and so forth. And we won't go into all the details, but what ended up happening is during that time, my mindset automatically shifted into, hey, I got to do whatever it takes to provide and move up and do things. And that's why I chose, sales. And it was B2C at that time. But I knew that if I continued to do that, and I drove an hour every day and commuted because you had to do, come to Bakersfield. I lived in Porterville. And then I got a harsh reality that my first wife didn't really like that. And there was other issues too, right? I mean, we don't need to get into, but she ended up wanting to have a divorce, and so that was another thing. And then on top of that, after that all kind of settled up, basically I got laid off again. And and I thought, man,
here comes another blow. Just start snowballing on you.
yeah, but at that moment, I think, Tim, I thought, you know what? I am tired of not being, somewhat in control. I mean, I don't believe that you can control anything, but I do believe that you can go to a direction and go in it and set a goal. And I said, I'm 25, and by the time I'm age 30, no matter what, I'm going out on my own.
Right.
And that was something that I set forward with. And then everything that I did after that was to learn.
Right.
And
So,
understand.
Yeah, that's another one of the things is when you decide to carve your own path, right?
Right.
Just hey, it's time for me to look at what I really want. And a lot of times, well, you mentioned the break was that, okay, I've got to really get this going. So when that happened, obviously self-doubt kicks in, like,
Oh, yeah.
can I actually do this?
Oh, 100%. I think the reason why I did it, truthfully, was because I did set that goal, and I said no matter what. And it was something that it was like, but I would go back and forth because when I got to that 30th year, I was doing pretty well. At the place I was working with, I was making really good money at a buck of business, and a lot of people said, "What is the matter with you?" Right? Because it's not just the doubt that you have that you feel, but it's weird. I don't know if you just attract that kind of like response from people, but there's a lot of people that will tell you why you shouldn't do something. Now, whether it's their own stuff, whether it's your stuff, whether you're just actually putting it out there so people bring it back to you, I mean, that's something you have to really be careful with and really harness that.
Yeah, well, when you look at the statistics, right, of the United States, only 9% of the United States is entrepreneurs.
9%. I didn't know that.
So 91%
Or
cannot
not.
wrap their brains around. And it's like the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right?
Right.
And I was raised with that, like, just get a job. And especially, my parents' age and probably your parents' age was like, no, get a job, especially one that has a good pension.
Yeah.
Because that was life.
That was it.
And this is safe. This is secure. This is guaranteed.
Right.
And my dad worked at a custom lead smelter. I worked there in the summers. And
That must have been fun.
being on the working end of a shovel in full coveralls and hard hat and respirator was like, oh, hell no. I'm going back to college. I wasn't even sure I wanted to go to college till I worked that summer job. I was like, yeah, college is not bad. I can sit in a class. So, but I think that's the reaction. And it's weird how a lot of times it's your family because they're trying to protect you.
Right.
But not knowing they're putting obstacles in the way of, and those doubts in your heads. So then, what was the actual turning point when you were like, hey, I'm going to open my own business?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't do it right when I turned 30. I did it in the 30th year, right? And it was really that pivotal point. And at that time, this is interesting too, is that I met my wife, the love of my life, who I've been married to for 17
Dude, you're
years.
racking up the points today. Congratulations.
I've had some really good coaching.
You're keeping track of that, right? Feel that love bang, brother.
But what was interesting was she too was like, man, this is a little bit kind of crazy, but we had a similar background. So I married my high school sweetheart. She married her high school sweetheart. Mm-hmm. Yes, I did have a kid, right? She did not. But after 2 years, both of them wanted out. So they both wanted divorces. So we had that level of, commonality. And the crazy thing about it is that we got to that point and I took that leap. And I remember the day I went into the guy that I work for, and he was like, he was shocked. And I try to explain it. I mean, literally, it was like, hey, I got to go. Like, I can't even finish this conversation with you, and I got to go. And I'm like, well, I'll just be here when you get back. I know it's a lot to process. And he came back, and he's like, well, just leave now. And I said, well, I've got some deals I want to clean up for you in 2 weeks. And I said, as a matter of fact, we can continue to work together because I'll represent your company too. I'll broker for you. And that was helpful. And then what ended up happening is that my wife came into the business too, and we were now she was doing all the internal calls, and I would go out and see people. And now both of us were committed. So it wasn't like oh man, sometimes people will have one of the spouses, they're working a job, right? And they're bringing in the steady income. This was like, man,
we're both jumping in with both feet, right?
Yes. And you got the mortgage, and you got the kid to support, still, right? And all of that. It was and now you're newly married. So, but that was a push.
Stressors, right? I think if you go back to the stress index,
yes,
I think you guys hit all of them in a year, right? Yeah. Let's get married, start a business.
Yeah.
Move in together.
Yep. Just do it all.
Just flip it all. Yeah.
Just do it all. Why not? And so would I say that is the formula? I don't know. That was just the way, but it was like, man, you did this, right? We're here, and we're not going to look back. It was like one of those moments. I mean, I don't know if you call it the burn the ships down Cortez did, right? Hey, we're not going back kind of a thing. But I mean, it's not like we couldn't go back in the workforce, but it was really like, we're all in,
right?
We're going. And it took a while. And there was a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of roadblocks, because this is what I know you understand as an entrepreneur, but we don't always have it all figured out. I mean, sometimes the way that we think it's going to go doesn't necessarily go.
I think for sure. I think as we were talking about a little bit before, like athletes talk about mental performance. And one of my favorite things that I read when I was doing this stuff was one of the keys of success in athletics is, mental imagery. Everybody teaches that. But this guy was specific to go, when you do mental imagery, expect the adversity, right? It's not going to be perfect.
Right.
So what are you going to do when you hit it? But for some reason in business, we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're going to hit adversity. There is no clear path.
Right. And it's going to come from places that you probably don't even really expect sometimes, right? I mean, that is
and
the
so
name
can
of the
growth,
game.
right? I was reading this morning, I can't remember who was saying it, but it was a quote that your plan is your strategy, but your growth is going to come from the unplanned.
Right.
The things you didn't see until you get out there. It's like, oh, wow, yeah, I could shift over here, and here's a whole line of business I didn't initially have in my plan.
Right.
And can you pivot to that, or do you say, no?
Yep.
This is I'm following my plan to the letter. So I think it's that resilience and that flexibility of and that curiosity of keeping your eyes open. Of what else is out there?
Well, and to be fair, to your point, I mean, you've got the external market conditions that are always fluctuating. So you may not have a choice in the matter of wanting to do it your way. And if you can't be curious and flexible, I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah, or something like a pandemic hits that nobody saw.
No.
And you saw a ton of, this is another statistic that I looked up was, and of all weird things they call it, I was trying to figure out what the failure rates of businesses were, right?
Yeah.
Especially, so I was looking online, and the government has a statistic, and they call it the birth and death rate. And I went past it like 10 times. It's like, no, why is this in the business section? That's actually a statistic that the U.S. government tracks, the births and deaths of businesses.
What?
And
I didn't know that.
It's a line graph, yeah. Like I said, 10 times I went by, and I was like, that's a weird thing to have in here.
Yeah.
So I finally opened it, and it shows like up until COVID, there was always like the businesses that were being born and the businesses that were dying. The businesses being born were always above, like 10% above the ones dying. So there was a constant growth of business. 2000 hits, and it's the deaths spike.
Okay.
And the new businesses dive down. Then 21, 22, you see a bunch of new businesses open because it was the recovery from
Right.
loss. But in 22, 23, the deaths spike again because it was people that thought, oh, I'll go into business for myself without knowing how to do it.
Wow.
And ever since then, so if you go back and balance it, it's been flatlined since 2000. The death and birth of businesses. That's the government's interest in, we got a problem because we need more businesses coming in, so we have more people working, so we have more tax money.
Right.
So that's how I got involved in creating this entrepreneur program. And they were like, how do we fix this problem? It's like, well, let's go back to the basics of setting up the right kind of business.
Well, if you think about that, it's kind of interesting because you have that kind of going on if it filters out, like when you talk about birth rates and younger people and people having, more kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of things are set up like for the government on that. Like, I mean, the idea of like Social Security, right?
Mhm.
Like you're saying, right? They're supposed to pay in.
Right.
So at some
If you don't have
point,
that bubble,
we
you
get
got all
to-
these baby boomers heading towards
older.
Social Security, right?
Yep.
We don't have the workforce behind it.
To do that.
Yeah.
That's interesting that they actually track that. I mean, nobody ever talks about that. Isn't it kind of interesting how they don't? I mean, I'm sure they don't
And
want
to
to.
find it, you have to dig.
Wow.
I mean, you go on that government, and it's, I guess, justification for all the government workers. But there are so many reports that you got to filter through to try to find what you're looking for.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy. All right, so business started growing, started feeling some success. How do you keep your inner compass headed towards your ultimate mission?
Well, I think that's what I've come to the conclusion of, and I think this has to be a continual growth pattern, because I think a lot of people think, hey, once I get to this certain point, man, I'm just it just
Yeah.
cruises.
Right.
That's unrealistic.
I just got to get to this level.
Yep, that's not true, because you always have the external factors, and I call them like the macro, right? And then you have the
Mhm, yeah.
micro, you have the internals. But I think what happens is life continues to happen, so you have to be like well grounded into getting back into. And I think you and I had talked about this. Like, I find that being routined and disciplined, like going back to that whole
Yeah.
military, like
That
driving
core thing
that
still
core
coming through?
thing coming through, has really been beneficial, because at some point, yes, you will deviate from that, but if you can find your way back there or be
Right.
aware, the subconscious, you brought that up, to like, oh man, I'm off, pull back here, and redo. And I do believe that the subconscious has this ability to, like, yank you back in.
Mhm.
And then if you redo the movements, right, it's kind of like, you're a physical therapist, right? And you're kind of training things. If you can get back down to that center, then you can at least learn how to move forward again.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, in the physical therapy world, the big thing that I try to get new therapists to understand is all we really do is compensation patterns, right? And I think it's the
Right.
same in business, that when you have an injury, certain muscles become weak, certain muscles become tight.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't fix that initial problem, you're strengthening what's already strong, but you're not rebalancing the body the way it needs to be rebalanced. So
Absolutely.
you got to stretch those tight muscles and strengthen the weak muscles. And I think it's in business, we tend to do the same thing, right? Like, oh, this is my strength, so I'm going to really lean into my strength.
Right. Yeah. Hey, I'm really good at this one thing, but that may not be what your business needs
Right.
at that given
time.
moment.
Right.
It may be something that you think you want it
Right.
to work, but that's where we go back to that.
Yeah, it's because it's that subconscious thing, right? Like, man, I know I'm really good at this. And
Yes.
it's telling you, like, dude, do that.
Yeah.
Do that. Do that.
Just
And
do
it's
it. Just
yeah.
do it. And I think another thing too is I think as we get more experienced, we have to also understand that there are going to be things like that we're not good at,
Right.
that we should either complement or find other ways to balance out. But I will say that there has been times where, and I don't know if you ever felt this way, but like things are going kind of good, and you kind of want to come and just shake it up a little bit.
Mhm.
And it's just a weird thing, bro.
I do it all the time, man. I tell people all the time, when things are smooth, that's when I'm the most nervous,
Right.
because I know something's coming.
Right.
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 So, yeah, you intentionally do shake it up occasionally just to test the system. Like,
Yeah.
And
It's
just so
working.
everybody sees, like, oh, wait a minute, there is other stuff that could come,
Right.
you know,
Fracture or
and knock you
whatever it
off.
is.
Yeah. So what about, because remarried, have a child, and there's this weird perception of this life balance myth,
Ah,
you know, like, so how do you handle, like, family, especially with your wife in the business with you,
right.
but turning it off for family time too?
Well, that is a difficult thing because depending on the stress level of or what's going on, right? That becomes really cool. But I want to go back to that whole discipline thing again, where it's almost like you have to understand so if it's a balance issue of family time, there has to be a discipline of that too. And it's gonna feel weird at first. I mean, whenever you're recentering, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
getting back into your normal routine. So that again is now one thing I've learned and my wife has learned, like when we had, our first not, failed marriages, right? Or the other stuff is the communication stuff. So that's one of the things that we do well is we communicate, probably even over communicate more so. And most people are like, man, I don't talk to my spouse that much. But I think recognizing, what that pattern was, and if we can figure out what that is, even if we don't necessarily like what each other has to say in that moment, but if we can usually get through that part, then we can really identify what the issue is, and then come to a conclusion of how that balance needs to be.
I think, discipline everybody talks about, and the 10,000-hour rule and all
Oh
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But I think the missing word for a lot of people is deliberate.
Yes,
It has to be daily,
intentional.
deliberate discipline, not, oh, I'm disciplined.
Right?
Okay, great, but is it deliberate? Are you working on things you need to work on to get better?
Absolutely.
It's like that David Goggins, right?
Oh yeah, love that guy.
He has this crazy thing, but it's that whole idea of, look, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Right.
So as soon as you get comfortable, you need to find something that makes you uncomfortable again.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, and on balance, my personal philosophy that I came up with a long time ago is, having gone through all the physics classes and all that stuff, therapies, it's all based on the fulcrum, right?
Right.
So the fulcrum, in order to get balance, it has to be on a fulcrum. The problem in life is the fulcrum keeps moving.
Yes. Yes.
Family pressures pull it one way, business pressures pull it the other way. So if you're not paying attention to that, it's easy to let it shift where family issues override the business, or business issues, the family takes a back seat. But my personal philosophy is, if you can see that coming, and back to your communication thing, especially when you're working together, be like, all right, look,
Yeah.
business going crazy. We might need to back off on some of the family stuff for now. But we
Right.
will get back to it as soon as we can balance this thing up.
Absolutely.
So we're same thing. Something tragic happens in your family. I need some more help at work to give me time to deal with this, but then we'll get back on task.
Yep. No, that's true. I mean, we had it. I mean, I shared with you before another conversation. My dad has early onset Alzheimer's. That was totally unexpected. That was in 21. He lived in Arizona. We moved, and then we're basically taking care of 3 elderly people, and it was crazy. I was just having a conversation with my wife about this. Doing the communication thing, going, I didn't realize how much this is. Yes, my dad lives in his own place. My aunt looks after him. Then we have my mother-in-law. She lives in her own place, but they're like fully dependent. Like, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was down with a client, and we need to get his prescriptions refilled, and he takes medication, right? Just like a lot of elderly people. And we got 3 or 4 days left, and the pharmacy's like, hey, I think you need to call, because he goes down to Cedars, and they have the prescriptions. And we hadn't been down there for a long time, okay, because he's been doing well, and that was a whole nother process of going there. And they're like, well, we haven't seen you for a while, and you're going to have to come here in order for us to approve this. So
Perfect. That's a short trip.
I'm like, and he's got the head of the neurology department. So when is he going to be available?
Yeah.
Like once every 6 months. So it was really, really crazy to think about. So then I did that, and my wife got on, and we got our primary care. We've got our membership doctor, and luckily we were able to navigate this problem, but it was stressful, right?
Oh,
Because when he runs out of medication, it bothers him, right?
Mhm.
It trips him out, and we've seen what happens if that happens. So I'm looking at it going, man, this is one of those moments where it's really, really shook up. And then there's a little bit of me that goes, well, this should be obvious to you. I mean, you're in the business. But I was like, well, why, when you refilled the prescription last time, did you not just shoot a message out and say, hey, by the way,
By the way, this is the last time I can refill
we're
this
the last
without
time we're
seeing
doing
you.
this until we go see you,
Right.
and we need to make this happen. And then we could have dealt with it. But it was like literally a phone call.
Wow, but technology hasn't kept up with that, right? There's,
Right.
we don't have better. You can't text me or email me or.
No, they have their own app.
I
with,
know,
with
but
a messenger.
that's what's crazy, though. It's like-
no.
I called a doctor the other day, a dermatologist. Well, not the other day, months ago. I was like, hey, I need this, and they're like, okay, can you come down and fill this form out? I was like, well, just email it to me and I'll send it back. Okay, but can you fax it to us? I was like, fax? Oh,
Like,
shit.
how do we
Where the
even
hell's a
do that?
fax?
Yeah, we need a fax machine.
I gotta find one.
I got to dig one out at a garage
Luckily,
sale.
the
and
clinics have them, so I have to go to a
like,
clinic like, hey, can you fax this? Haven't faxed anything in years. I don't even know how to do it. So here, send this to this number.
oh
So
my
it's
gosh.
crazy. So with success, I think it's another thing that people trip up on is how has your definition of success changed? Because we talked about earlier, right? When you first get into
Oh
business, it's like, if we could just pay the damn bills,
yeah. Oh yeah.
if I could just replace my income, I'll
Oh
be
yeah.
good.
Oh
But
yeah.
how has it changed for you with the
You
growth?
know, it's. I would have to say that yes, you kind of go through these periods, and I think it's kind of an ebb and flow. And the reason why I have to describe it that way, because it really is like you'll start moving targets up, right? Like
Mhm.
it might be revenue targets, or
Mhm.
it might be, hey, this is the kind of wealth I want to build, or this is what I want to accomplish, and this is what I want to do. And it's interesting, but the one thing I would say at this point in time, it's time. Like I think about time now as like a huge goal of being able to do the things, in a balanced way, right? And not have to feel so, intense. And it doesn't mean that I want to lose any of that drive, right? But it really kind of goes back. And this is one of the things about having a child from a previous marriage who is now 24 years old and then having an 8-year-old, right? I'm a different parent today to my 8-year-old than my 24-year-old, because when he was young, I mean, I was go all the time. So you gotta be careful on what you kind of look at. But you go through these phases. I mean, everybody does. But the goal is like, okay, well, what's this gonna look like? I mean, am I gonna have more time to stop and smell some of the roses, right? And make sure that you balance it out, because kids grow fast.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the shift that you see, right? Is you start to understand your relevance of the whole world, not just in the business world.
Right.
Your relevance of the impact you have on your kids, the lessons we teach our kids.
Yes.
And a lot of times it's not intentional, but they're watching all the time, right?
All the time.
So they're like, okay, how's he handle this? How's he handle that? Is he come home mad and stressed out? Well, that doesn't look like a fun life. If you see your mom and dad fighting all the time, it's like, man, is that what this looks like? Is that what marriage looks like? Because it doesn't look like a lot of fun.
No, and that's something that I probably don't want to do, right?
Right,
Because
yeah.
they're just like, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So that's awesome. So how do you find fulfillment, and how do you measure success in life, not just in business?
I think it really has to come down to, that's another thing. So my son's married, and he's got a child of his own, so we're grandparents,
nice.
right? Yeah. So
It's a
there's
great thing.
It is a great thing.
You can spoil them and send them back. It's awesome. You don't have to deal with the repercussions after the fact. You want candy? Yeah.
That's the perks of the job. Absolutely. I think it's really, another thing when I talk about what my dad instilled in me, when I learned, it was about being there for people. And I like to help people. And what it really kind of goes down to now is, man, yes, do I want to, continue the success and get to these milestone goals? But, I want to do it while I'm helping people, and I want to help others that doesn't necessarily mean, customers that I definitely,
Mhm.
benefit from. It could be friends or people that I
Yeah.
come across, and those are the things that are important to me, because I think for me, I think that is more important than, hey, you know what, that guy was this, and he had all these things, but whatever.
Yeah, and I think it shows through really quick, right? Like there's a law of reciprocity that if you do something, it'll come back.
Right.
But there's a thin line between reciprocity and quid pro quo,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And once you become aware of it, you start to see, well, is this person helping me because they expect something back,
Right.
or are they just helping because they're a good person? And I tell people, like, again, with these laws, I look at them and go, they're missing a key point. And with the law of reciprocity, I think it's, if I help this person and don't expect anything, they might not reciprocate, but it might come around through somebody else,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, but when you expect it and then you get mad that, oh, I did this for this person and they didn't, it's like, no, that's quid pro quo.
Yeah, that's
If
different. That's
you
not the same
expect
thing.
that I'm going to get something back out of this, because I think people see through that pretty quick. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh
you're
yeah.
doing this. Yeah.
It's hard, and I think when you have that younger generation, and if it's like the same thing you said, if somebody's witnessing all of this type of behavior, and they don't understand, the fine line of what this is, I think it gets a little confusing to folks,
Yeah, it does.
and that's problematic, and that's it's interesting, because we look at, when we talk about some of the macro stuff that's changing, it is a, I don't want to say it's like a changing of the guard, but you're getting, like, I feel like people like in my age category and up, I mean, have a different set of, like, understanding relationship better. And I'm not saying that all young people don't, but I do see that there is, like, a very transactional, and maybe when you don't have to spend a lot of time with people, and because people are communicating via text, and
Right.
they're not having to actually get to know someone, it's more like, okay, well, why are you talking to me? Well, you're talking to me because, they want something, or vice versa. And it's and I'm not saying that isn't ingrained in human nature,
Yeah.
at even older
Little bit.
categories, but you want to make sure that continues.
No, I totally agree. I think part of my concern with the younger generations is that, yes, it's communication, but if it's all via text, emails, you miss the little nuances,
Right.
You're trying to read emotion into what somebody's writing.
Oh boy.
And then, so we tried to replace that with emojis, which makes it even more confusing. Like, the hell is it?
Have you seen how
What
many
are we talking
emoji
about?
choices you have
Oh, it's
now? I mean,
unbelievable,
it's
yeah.
like, yeah, who spent all that time creating that?
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Somebody with a lot of time. So, one of my favorite questions, if you could go back and talk to your 17, 18-year-old self right out of high school, what would you tell yourself about where you are and what's going to happen in the future?
I think what I would say is that you would. This is going to sound funny, but I would say don't take yourself so seriously. And the reason why I would say that is I remember going back there, and it wasn't like a pride thing. It was just like man, I was very hard on myself, right?
Okay.
Because because I had this mentality that I had to do these things, for these reasons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that I probably did a lot of was, man, if I'd screw up, man, there was a bigger critic than on Charles Ernst than Charles Ernst. And
we are our own worst enemies all the time.
100%. But that, I think, really stunted growth. That kind of, I mean, we are where we are. I mean,
Right.
I believe that. But if you were to say, hey, if you could actually go back in time and say, hey, let me change the trajectory a little bit for you,
Right.
I would say that. Don't take yourself so seriously that, you are incapable of making, you shouldn't be making mistakes. You shouldn't screw up. You shouldn't do that. Because I think when you get in that mindset, it can be detrimental to growth, because part of the ways that we do grow is that we make mistakes and we learn from them. But if you're just chastising yourself because you did it, and you're not really understanding why you did it, I think the growth would have come a lot sooner than it probably did.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think so. 2 out of my 3 kids are married now, and I told both of them, and my youngest son is probably getting close if he gets off the way. Anyhow, but I told them both, when they were saying, Dad, I think I'm gonna get married, and I told them and my daughter-in-law and son-in-law, I was like, look, awesome, but the one question you need to make sure you understand is, will you grow together? Right? So if one of you starts to grow and accelerate, is that going to be a problem?
Wow.
Because if you've got somebody that's stuck, like a set or fixed mindset, they're going to take your growth as something bad,
Right.
instead of being there to support you. So I said, just make sure that you know that you're not going to be the same person in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right?
Right.
So that's just part of the natural order. So if you're not going to be there to support each other through those changes, through that growth, then it's probably not a good decision.
Yeah.
Right? But and of course, it's like anything, you're the dad, and they're like, oh, yeah, whatever, Dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
It's like, no, I'm telling you. And they've seen it now that,
Yeah.
and
it is nice when
the two of them have kids, and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
I told you adulting was going to happen, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, bills get paid. Bills have to be paid. Well,
Yeah. Kids need
need everything.
They need food. They need shelter.
Yeah, it's like,
at some point.
man, I didn't know this was this big of a problem. So awesome. So I think, thank you so much for being on. I think it's an incredible story, and I just reflect back on how opposite it was, right? Because I was the opposite. I grew up in Montana, like small world, and I didn't get exposed to the world until pro baseball.
Right.
All of a sudden, I had
Whole
the
new
opposite.
world.
The whole world came, and I've got like people from all over the world, all over the country. It's like, wow. And instead of being like, these guys are a bunch of idiots, it was like, oh man, there is so much to this world that I didn't know. You were the opposite. You had seen it before, and then came and said, all right, now I got to fit in. So
Yeah.
congratulations on everything you've done. I really enjoy the times we talk, because I love that mindset of flexibility and resilience, I think, but with the underlying foundation of that daily discipline of staying true.
No,
So congrats,
absolutely.
man.
Thank you.
Keep it
Thank you for
going.
having me on the show.
Absolutely. Appreciate you letting us use the digs. And
No, absolutely. And, if there's anybody else that wants to, tune into our, podcast, we're, Hey Charles on Apple and Spotify.
Yeah.
Hey Charles Biz on YouTube. Charles Ernst on LinkedIn, and Hey Charles 77 on Instagram and TikTok.
right, hit him up. It's good information. And I think, just lastly, that the thing I like most about your approach is that questions up front. You don't come in with I have the answer.
Right.
It's like, all right, what are you dealing with? Let me find out where you're at, and then let me find a solution to what you're dealing with. Not, here's my solution, it fits for everybody.
Right. Right.
So,
And that's how it should be.
It
I
should.
mean, it's
It's
communication.
not.
Well, and Tim, I got to say, I really appreciate the fact that we got connected, and
Absolutely.
I've found so much value in our conversations, and I've learned a lot, and I just got to sit back and go, man, this is awesome to be able to have an opportunity to be able to share ideas and talk, and this is something that I would encourage people to do. It's like, hey, have a conversation, sit down, talk through some things. You never know what's going to come out of that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things of when you go into business, how lonely it gets, especially when you're the top people, right?
Oh, man, it is.
All of a sudden, you start talking go to family events and start talking about, oh, what are you up to? And you start talking, people look at you like, are you an alien? Like, what?
Yeah,
I have no idea what the hell you're
Like,
talking
are
about.
you speaking Greek, or you're like, and then the best is when they start asking questions. You're like, oh my gosh, man, this is so hard. Like, it's like, so what do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about you. And what are you up to? Oh, geez, here we go. All right. Well, awesome.
That's great.
Appreciate it. And we'll be talking soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thanks
Absolutely.
again for having me on.
Thank you.